Hi, everyone. My name is Israel Michael. I'm a senior database administrator and a trainer. In this video, I will be showing you how we can use the Redgate SQL MultiScript tool for SQL MultiScript deployment. As I promised in my previous video, which I showed you how to use a release script deployment using a custom PowerShell script. So we'll focus on the use of Redgate MultiScript tool for the same purpose, to deploy multiple scripts to multiple databases and multiple instances. Now, this Redgate tool is a licensor tool. It's a per user license. The good thing with Redgate tool is they give you 14 days trial period just to download and try. So the only thing that you need to do is have a Redgate account. So just need a username and a password to create an account, and that's it. So when you so when you go to the site and download the tool, it's not only giving you the MultiScript tool, but it will download as a package file, an installer file. That installer file has a number of additional tools. So this is it's called a SQL tool build package, which is an installer file, and the SQL tool build has a list of administrative tools. We have a SQL compare, SQL data compare. So this SQL compare compares schema, and if you want to compare data, between tables, then you have the SQL compare, and you have a number of other tools in this SQL tool build. The way I do it is I will just clear out the checklists, the check boxes, and then pick whichever tool I want to install. I don't usually install everything at once. No, so for this purpose, I install only the SQL MultiScript tool. That's why it's graded out. It says your installed tools. And I have the tool already opened here. So this is what the SQL MultiScript tool looks like. Now, so before using the SQL MultiScript tool, the first thing we need to do is create what we call a distribution list. So in this, just the way to create a distribution list is you have a button called a configure in the right upper corner, and I'll go ahead and click the button. Now, so as you can see, you have this this list here on the left box. Now, I did not add it. It kind of searches through the network and pull the list of SQL Server instances from the network. So this is my lab environment, and it doesn't necessarily mean that this SQL servers already exist. For example, I don't recall this instance. So if you click it, it's tuning and it's going to fail. So it's just a name and it's not really an instance anymore, but maybe the information is already there in the registry Hive. That could be why it's just pulling this name. Now, so the way to do it is, if you don't have SQL Server that's listed here, then you need to add the SQL instance. You add the name and use either Windows authentication or SQL Server authentication, which is, if you use a SQL authentication, you need to have a SQL name, the name, the account name, and the password. Now, I use a Windows authentication because it's much easier to use a Windows authentication, which you don't have to. It's convenient in the sense that if you are using a SQL Server authentication here, every time your password expires, you have to come here and then update the distribution list, which is not the case with Windows authentication. Once you register the instances and you are using your own credential, which I believe if you are a DBA, then you have the sysadmin role in all production SQL Server instances. So as long as you are inside a box where it has full access to all the production SQL instance in the network, then it's better to use a Windows authentication just for your convenience. So now I will just check if I'm able to see the ProtoSQL one. All right, so ProtoSQL 1 is good. ProtoSQL 2, Yes. Now the thing is, the databases in PostSQL 2 are in an availability group. I'm going to go ahead and check here. So if you look at these databases, 2011, 12, and 13, they're in an availability group. However, the primary is AG SQL 23 is on SQL 3. So the replicas are PostSQL 2 and 3. So PostSQL 2 is a secondary replica of the AG23. So we don't have to use this database. The way to do it is we need to register the listener if you have to use. And I don't want to use also PostSQL 3 because if failover occurs and then you have PostSQL 2 as a primary, then the database on PostSQL 3 will be read-only copies of the AG. So I will just register the listener. I think what's the listener name? I will have to look the listener. So LSN SQL 23, right? So that's the listener name. So we'll register LSN SQL 23, and then I'll use LSN. And then we use a Windows authentication and we'll say add. Just to make sure that the name is correct. LSN SQL 23, yes. So what it's saying, a network-related instance error occurred while establishing connection. The server was not found or accessible. So LSN, oh, I'm sorry, I didn't add S here. Okay, LSN SQL 23, right? So LSN SQL 23 is already added. Now have the instance. So as I said, if you have an always an availability group, use a listener, the listener name, not the individual instance names. All right, so I have a listen, so I'm gonna check for prod SQL 4. Okay, I'll have this one. All the database adventure works, PostSQL 6, AW, I have them here. And then I have 89, which is a cluster instance. So if you look at here, it's 89, and then if I run this one, all right, so I'm just running OSDM cluster nodes. So you can see the cluster is between 8 and 9, and 8 is the current owner. So it doesn't really matter because the database are in the shared storage. Now, so I can see that I have the connection is valid here. So what I need to do on the right side is create a new distribution list for prod. So I'll call it prod distro, right? I call it prod distro. I call it a prod distro. And then in this prod distro, I will just pull from the listener. I'll just pull these databases and highlight all the databases that I want to, put it in the prod distro. See, once the database are in the distribution list, then the database names will be graded out to just look gray, which means the database are in the distribution list. Now I'll go to PostSQL 1. I'll just pick these databases. And I'm not going to go to PostSQL 23 because these are the database are in the AG, and there is no need to have them here. We'll go to PostSQL 4. I have this one, and then to have it PostSQL 5. Okay, I'll just skip 5 and I'll go to 6. Excuse me. Add here PostSQL 6, and then go to the cluster instance and get these 3 databases. Now I have my prod distribution list, and I'll say okay. Now as you can see, I have the list of databases. So I have the listener DNS name or SQL standalone instance name, that the database name. So which is easy to identify which database and from which instance. Now I will, in addition to having the prod distribution list, so before we release the scripts to or deploy them to these production databases, it's always best practice to test the release scripts onto a copy of a production database, which is get a fresh copy of a production database, restore it to a lower environment stage, or test environment, and then run the scripts on it, on that database, or it could be 2 or 3 databases. So for this case, we'll just use one database. Now the reason being, it will. So if there are some errors, syntactical errors, or some objects that don't exist, or there are some missing objects, then that will give you the time to for some of the syntactical errors maybe to correct by yourself, or to work with developers or other team, so that they are correcting the source control and you have the updated version of the script. So once the testing in that copy of the production database is completed and all successfully passed, then you can deploy to production, to the list of databases, so that you don't have surprises. So for this one, I will create a so I'll create the what you call a test distribution list, another distribution list, and I'll go ahead and say configure. And on ProSQL 2, I have, this is not in an availability, just this is a database that's out of AG. So I have what you call AW1001 test. As I said, so the naming here, prod, doesn't mean that it's a prod environment. This is my lab environment. So I just restored this database from ProSQL 1. So the database is this one, 1001, and then I have I took a copy of the database and restored it as AW1001 test. So I will create a new distribution list called test distro, right? I'll call test distro, and then I'll just add this database. If you have additional databases, you randomly picked, you can do that, okay? But for this case, then we'll have only one database, just to run the script is on. Okay, and I'll say, okay, so I have a test distro and then a prod distro, right? Now, what I'm going to do is I'll bring the list, the deployment script. To do that, I'll just click here, add existing button. And then when I say the add existing button, I have the scripts in this folder, and I'll just highlight them all and then say open. So I get the list of scripts to be deployed. And then I have also, for instance, the production distribution list. Now, so they say this is a very handy tool because it gives you the ability to handpick whichever script you want to deploy. You can just pick whichever you want, and then to whichever database you want to deploy to, right? So that that makes it more flexible, and that DBA can have control over where to deploy the scripts, right? So you can just deploy to all or deploy to some, depending on the need, or you can have an additional distribution list depending on the requirements where you'll be deploying the scripts. So the first thing that I said that we will do is to run this script, the scripts on this test distribution, on this test database, right? Just we want to make sure that all the scripts pass the testing, and then they are syntactically good, and then they are semantically also good, which means that they pass both the syntax and the semantics of the testing. So if you do the parsing, and the parsing will do for you what we call the syntax check. So I will just run everything, and then when you run it, for example, say you see an error here, right? Now it says get account in date, and what it's telling you is, okay, the database AW1100 does not exist, right? So it's it's a good error message here. So we'll just go to the account in date script, and then it says, okay, use AW1001. Now usually when you are deploying the scripts to multiple databases, you should not use a database context, because that database context will only point to just to one database, and that will make the script fail to other databases. So you just remove that one, and then I'll clean up this the progress here, and then run it again on the parsing, right? So we are doing the parsing. So another parsing here, parsing error. What it's telling us is incorrect, syntax needs dash. That's for the individual customer. Where is the individual customer file here? You click it here. So the good thing, as I said, also with this tool is that you can, rather than going and opening the script in a file, maybe it was with a notepad or with a notepad plus plus, then you can just do it here. So I have it here, for instance, just one dash. I'll just put another dash and make it a comment out. Right now, clean again, and then let's do one more testing. Right, parsing. So as you can see, all the scripts have passed the parsing, which means they're syntactically correct now. Now we will just do a full-blown run of the scripts that will do again the syntax check and then the semantics. So I'm running here, and then you got something here, right? So it says product archive. What's happening for this product archive? Now there's one thing that I missed to tell you. So on this right upper corner, you see there's an on error. What do you want to do, right? So you have a number of options that says, okay, continue executing or skip the script, stop executing, or all these 4 options. So for us, I chose stop executing. So which means that when it encounters error, and it will stop going to the next script, right? So that's why it stopped here. Now it says there's already an object named product archive, which is a table. So if I click the product archive file, then I have it here. So it says create table. Now, so for stored procedures, views, functions, triggers, and whatnot, you can say create and drop and create, or you can say create or alter, right? But when it comes to table, it's a different ball game. Tables contain data, or they store data. So if a table exists, you don't drop that table. So a simple snippet that I'm using is if the object, is null, which means that if the object does not exist, then create it. If the object exists, which is for the table, then you don't have to create anything. So I think the reason why it failed is because this is commented out, and that is I did it deliberately. So I'll just clean this one, and then we run it again, right? Now, so we still have a number of we are doing on the test, right? On this test database. Remember, we are doing still a script validation. Now, it also failed again on bill of materials. It says there is an object named. So where is the bill of materials here? Now, okay, so prior to SQL 2016 SCP1, you can use this snippet. So if object ID, which is whatever that object name is, if it is not null, which means if it exists, you drop it and then you create it. Okay, you can just do for stored procedure, views, triggers, functions, and the likes. But from 2016 SCP1 and above, Microsoft added a new statement called create or alter, which means if the object does not exist, it will create it. If not, alter it, which means the object already existed. So I can say create or alter because the version of instance that I'm going to be running are mostly 2019, else 2016. So I can use create or alter. I can also use this one. So if you have a SQL Server version, usually like 2016, 2014 or below, right? Which is then you can use this snippet. Now I'll just clean again and then run it. So again, another one on get manager employee. What happened here is the same thing. Object already exists, right? So here it says create. Then I'll say add, right, or alter, right? So if I do that, I'm just correcting the scripts. And so if I think you can talk to the development team and say, hey guys, our environment is 2016 SP1 and above. Please, if you have procedure reviews and functions and the likes, just use create or alter, when they give it to you, rather than you trying to correct all these things by yourself. And sometimes you may be releasing, hundreds of scripts. So, which means that you'll be tasked to manually correct all those script files, which is going to be time consuming. So as I said, the other thing is like rather than you correcting those kind of things, then you have to follow your company's policy. If the company's policy suggests that you need to the change has to be made in the source control, and then an updated version of the script have to be given to you, then it follows that. Okay, so whatever is your company's policy about release management or change source control, then you just follow those policies. Now there's another one here, individual customer. What's happening with the individual customer? The same thing, right? It says there's already an object named individual customer. Now, so what we do here is go to the individual customer, and the same thing, it's a view, so also create or alter view, right? And then clean again and run it. And then so the individual customer, what's happening? Okay, it says, oh no, I say, all right, I think I made a mistake myself, right? Alter. Okay, so the good thing that you can see is like when you have a statement, so the statement is changed to blue, which tells you that this is a correct statement. Now we'll just clean again and run it. Now, so as you can see, our script deployment to a test distro database is successful. So which means that the scripts have passed both the semantics and the syntax check. So now we are ready to deploy the scripts to the production distribution list, right? So I'll switch to the prod distro, and then I'll check all the boxes here, and then clean all here, and then make it ready for the production release. And so as I always say, is sometimes you may get surprises here also. Even if you do testing and you make sure that everything passes on a database or a few databases, then there is a possibility of what you call a schema drift, which means that some database may have a different schema than what is in source control. So there may be a difference, in the schema among these databases. And if you see some errors, then you need to read the errors and then correct them as you go. So I will run the scripts on all these databases and then see how the proceed. So you see the count is increasing. So there are 25 databases in the list, and then it's doing the deployment. All right, so as you can see, the release has been successful. All the scripts have been deployed to all 25 databases in these all SQL instances. So that's a success. So you can just go ahead. You have if you want to save the results, then you have the option to save it into a CSV file. You can also display as a text or as a grid. I think I like the grid, honestly. So I can just clean it here. And another thing that I want to show you before we wrap up this discussion is if you want to export the distribution list, say this distribution list you just created by yourself, if you want to share it with other DBAs, then go to tools, and then there's an option to say export the distribution list, and then you can do for the prod or for prod and test, for whichever you want, and you can say export, and then you can export it as a file and then share the file with other DBA members. Now, if other DBA has the same distribution list, and it gives you then the way to import that distribution list is go to the tools tab and then have the import distribution list option. So you click here and then you get the file, and then so you have the distribution list. Now, one more thing I want to say here is every time you have a release, you need to update the production distribution list, because sometimes there will be database migration. Some of the database will be moved from one instance to another instance, or new databases have been created. So in this case, every time you need to update your script, as I said, either for new databases or new databases have been moved, or some databases have been destroyed or taken offline or become read-only. Okay, so you have to make sure that you update your distribution list before release. So that's for today. I hope you enjoyed the video. Thank you for watching.